It was a balmy autumn day when four friends decided to embark on an impromptu road trip. Sarah, Mike, Jess, and Tom were college students, eager to escape the pressures of their final exams and the monotonous routines of their campus life. The open road promised freedom and adventure, and they were determined to make the most of it. Mike, the group's charismatic leader, suggested they take an off-the-beaten-path route through the Appalachian Mountains. "I've heard there's a place called Devil's Pass," he said with a grin. "The views are supposed to be amazing, and it's not too far from here." Jess, always up for an adventure, nodded enthusiastically. "Sounds perfect. I've been wanting to explore the mountains anyway." Sarah and Tom exchanged a glance. While they were more cautious, the excitement of their friends was contagious. "All right," Sarah agreed. "Let's do it." Tom, the most responsible of the group, quickly mapped out the route and stocked their SUV with snacks, drinks, and supplies. They set off with high spirits, their laughter and chatter filling the car as they left the familiar streets behind. The drive through the mountains was breathtaking. The leaves had turned vibrant shades of red, orange, and yellow, creating a picturesque landscape that seemed straight out of a painting. They stopped frequently to take photos and marvel at the beauty surrounding them. As they climbed higher into the mountains, the road became narrower and more winding. The occasional cabin or small town broke the monotony of the forest, but for the most part, they were alone on the road. "Are you sure this is the right way?" Sarah asked, a hint of doubt in her voice. "Yeah, it's just a little further," Mike replied confidently. "We'll be there before you know it." However, as the day wore on, the road seemed to stretch endlessly before them, with no sign of Devil's Pass. The sun began to set, casting long shadows across the forest. The once beautiful scenery now took on a more ominous tone. Night fell quickly in the mountains, and the darkness was absolute. The headlights of their SUV barely penetrated the inky blackness, and the winding road seemed to close in around them. The GPS signal had long since vanished, leaving them to rely on Mike's memory and a vague map they had found online. "Maybe we should turn back," Tom suggested, his voice tense. "No way," Mike insisted. "We're almost there. I can feel it." As if on cue, they rounded a bend and saw a dilapidated sign by the side of the road. "Devil's Pass, 2 miles," it read, barely legible in the fading light. "See? We're close," Mike said triumphantly. They pressed on, but the atmosphere grew more unsettling with each passing minute. The trees seemed to loom closer, their branches clawing at the car like skeletal hands. The air grew colder, and an eerie silence enveloped them. At last, they reached Devil's Pass. The road ended at an old, abandoned lodge, its windows boarded up and its once grand facade now weathered and decayed. The sight sent a shiver down Sarah's spine. "Are you sure this is safe?" she asked, eyeing the lodge warily. "It'll be fine," Mike said, though even his bravado seemed a bit forced now. "Let's check it out." They got out of the car and approached the lodge. The front door creaked ominously as Mike pushed it open. Inside, the air was musty and stale, and the floorboards groaned under their weight. "Looks like no one's been here in years," Tom observed, shining his flashlight around. "Perfect place for a spooky story," Jess said with a nervous laugh. They decided to explore the lodge, hoping to find some clues about its history. They found old photographs, furniture covered in dust, and strange symbols etched into the walls. It was clear that the place had once been a bustling retreat, but now it was a ghost of its former self. As they ventured deeper into the lodge, they stumbled upon a hidden staircase leading to the basement. Against their better judgment, they descended into the darkness, their flashlights barely illuminating the narrow steps. The basement was even more unsettling than the rest of the lodge. It was filled with old, rusted machinery and tools, and strange symbols were painted on the walls in a dark, dried substance. "What do you think this is?" Jess asked, her voice trembling. "Some kind of ritual site, maybe?" Tom suggested. "Whatever it is, it's creepy as hell." They were about to head back upstairs when they heard a faint whispering sound. It seemed to be coming from a small, dark alcove at the far end of the basement. "Did you hear that?" Sarah whispered, her heart pounding. "Yeah," Mike replied, his bravado now completely gone. "Let's check it out." As they approached the alcove, the whispering grew louder. They shone their flashlights into the darkness and saw a figure standing there, its eyes glowing in the light. It was an old man, his face gaunt and his eyes filled with a strange, unsettling intensity. "Who are you?" Mike demanded, trying to sound brave. The old man stepped forward, his movements slow and deliberate. "You shouldn't be here," he said in a raspy voice. "This place is cursed." "What do you mean?" Sarah asked, her fear mounting. "The lodge. It was built on sacred ground. The spirits here are angry, and they don't take kindly to intruders." "We didn't mean any harm," Tom said. "We just got lost and needed a place to stay for the night." "You must leave," the old man insisted, "before it's too late." "How do we get out of here?" Jess asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The old man pointed towards the door. "Follow the road, back the way you came. Don't stop, and don't look back." Without another word, he vanished into the darkness, leaving them alone in the eerie silence of the basement. The group wasted no time in getting back to their car. The fear that had gripped them was now a full-blown panic. They sped down the winding road, desperate to put as much distance between themselves and Devil's Pass as possible. As they drove, the whispering returned, louder and more insistent. Strange shadows flitted across the road, and the trees seemed to close in around them. The car's headlights flickered, casting unsettling shadows on the forest floor. "Faster, Mike!" Sarah urged, her eyes wide with fear. "I'm going as fast as I can," Mike replied, his knuckles white as he gripped the steering wheel. Suddenly, the car's engine sputtered and died, leaving them stranded in the middle of the dark, foreboding forest. They tried to restart the car, but it was no use. The whispering grew louder, and they could feel an oppressive presence closing in around them. Shadows moved at the edge of their vision, and the temperature dropped sharply. "We need to get out of here," Tom said, his voice shaking. "We need to find help." They grabbed their flashlights and set off on foot, hoping to find a way out of the forest. The whispering followed them, growing louder and more urgent with each step. As they walked, they stumbled upon an old cemetery, its tombstones weathered and covered in moss. The sight filled them with dread, but they had no choice but to press on. Suddenly, they heard a scream. Jess had fallen into an open grave, her flashlight casting eerie shadows on the ground. "Jess!" Sarah cried, rushing to help her friend. As they pulled Jess out of the grave, they saw a figure standing at the edge of the cemetery. It was the old man from the lodge, his eyes glowing with an otherworldly light. "You should have listened," the old man said, his voice echoing through the forest. "Now it's too late." "What do you want from us?" Mike demanded, trying to keep his voice steady. "The spirits demand retribution," the old man replied. "You have trespassed on sacred ground, and you must pay the price." Before they could react, the old man raised his hand, and the whispering turned into a deafening roar. The ground shook, and the shadows seemed to come alive, swirling around them like a dark, malevolent force. Desperate to escape, they ran through the forest, the old man's laughter echoing in their ears. The trees seemed to close in around them, and the path ahead became increasingly difficult to navigate. Just when they thought all hope was lost, they stumbled upon a clearing. In the center of the clearing was a small, weathered cabin, its windows glowing with a warm, inviting light. "Come on," Sarah urged. "We can hide in there." They ran to the cabin and burst through the door, slamming it shut behind them. Inside, they found an old woman sitting by the fire, her eyes kind but filled with sadness. "You've encountered the spirits, haven't you?" she asked, her voice gentle. "Yes," Tom replied, out of breath. "How do we get away from them?" "The spirits are bound to this land," the old woman explained. "We must leave the forest and never return." "But our car broke down," Mike said, desperation in his voice. "We can't get out." The old woman nodded and handed them a small, weathered map. "Follow this path," she said. "It will lead you to the main road, but hurry, before the spirits find you." With the map in hand, they thanked the old woman and set off once more into the darkness. The whispering had subsided, but they knew they had little time to waste. Following the map, they navigated the dense forest, the path winding and treacherous. The oppressive presence of the spirits seemed to linger just behind them, urging them to move faster. After what felt like an eternity, they finally emerged onto the main road. The sight of the asphalt and the distant lights of civilization filled them with relief. "We made it," Sarah said, her voice shaking with emotion. "Let's get out of here," Mike said, leading them towards a small town visible in the distance. They walked until they reached the town, where they found help and safety. They contacted a towing service to retrieve their car and spent the night in a local motel, too shaken to talk about their ordeal. The next morning, they left the mountains behind, their spirits heavy with the memories of Devil's Pass. They vowed never to speak of the events that had transpired, each of them haunted by the whispering voices and the old man's warning. Years later, they would still feel the chill of that night, the darkness that had almost consumed them. They never returned to the Appalachian Mountains, and the name Devil's Pass became a taboo among them. The spirits of the forest remained, waiting for the next group of unwitting travelers to trespass on their sacred ground, and the old man, a guardian of the cursed land, watched over it with his glowing eyes, ready to exact retribution on those who dared to enter Devil's Pass.